And today we've got the right guy joining us in the studio, former government advisor James Price. Now, obviously, a lot of the Today Show is going to be dominated by the chaos in Parliament last night, and we'll get to the details and Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker's problems, obviously, in a little while. But what I'd like to chat about before we get to the meat of this massive story, this parliamentary pandemonium, as we rightly classified it, it's just the unseemly nature of what we saw last night. The way these politicians demean themselves. They're debating, you know, in essence, the death of babies, of women, of children. There's thousands of people dying in this awful Middle Eastern war, and all they're doing is squabbling about their procedures, playing politics. Kier Starmer disgracing himself, frankly. And as I say, I think it's vulgar and they demean themselves.
Yeah, I think it's hard to disagree with that in lots of ways, but I think it's worse. I think that they are using these horrible scenes that are happening in the Middle East, forgetting, by the way, half of the atrocities that started all of the horrors over there in the first place. And they're using this and they're trying with the most kind of emotional language they possibly can to talk about dead babies and all these, the most emotive things possible. What are they really doing this for? They're doing it to score domestic political points amongst other people they don't like in the House of Commons, party political broadcasting. And then what's going to be happening in the general election coming up, and trying to say to various different groups, look at me, I'm a good person. We'll talk about the security implications as well. But
the meaningless nature of what they were doing anyway, because we keep talking about a vote. There wasn't a vote. There was never going to be a vote. It's one of those nod-through things that are even utterly meaningless.
I think for me, what I think is so utterly disgusting, deplorable and dangerous now is if this is true, that Labour essentially went to the Speaker behind closed doors before that debate and said, look, unless you let our motion go through, our MPs are at risk of death threats, constituencies being burnt down, you will have blood on your hands. Then Sir Kier Starmer is behaving in exactly the same way as these awful extremist zealots are behaving, the ones that he's pandered to, the ones that he's enabled, because at the end of the day, he's kept silent on this because he wants their votes.
It's getting harder and harder to put our heads in the sand about this and ignore what's actually been going on for a long, long time now, right? And we've seen just how well the termites have eaten, how long and deep they've burrowed down in seeing all of this. And it's only so much longer that we can turn a blind eye to it. That even the politicians can turn a blind eye to the fact that one of their number a few years ago was stabbed to death by someone who said he did it because the way that the chap voted on the Syria bombings 10 years ago, and because he was a member of the Conservative Friends of Israel. Instead, they started bleating about online anonymity. Mike Freer, the Justice Minister, saying he's not standing again because his office has been bombed and he's been attacked by Islamist groups and all these sorts of things. They're just about managing to pretend that this stuff isn't happening. And now you've got probably the man who's maybe the next Prime Minister scurrying up apparently to the Speaker and saying, please let us have this, because otherwise my MPs are going to be attacked and they're going to be victims of violence themselves.
Which was, if that's true, and he was seen disappearing into that little room behind the Speaker's chair, also loitering in the cloisters of Westminster. Sue Gray, the Labour Chief of Staff, was seen as well. If it is true that what they were saying to Lindsay Hoyle, listen, if you don't allow our amendment to, you know, some of our MPs might get killed by these Muslim mobs, then that is disgraceful behaviour on the part of Sir Kier Starmer. It really is.
And it's bad enough on this sort of pointless vote, as you say today, right? This is meant to be the SNP getting their day where they play silly politics, because on Thursdays you don't do kind of debating about legislation. Bad enough for that. If this is the way that Starmer's going to do this, right, when there's a serious problem, when there's a serious threat from what is now clearly an enemy within, and he runs around and breaks our constitutional conventions about all this stuff, what on earth is going to happen when this man is in charge of the country? Terrifying.
He'd rather break apart our politics and force the Speaker to potentially have to resign. Let's see what happens. I think we'll probably end up with some breaking news one way or another during this programme. But he'd rather do that to appease these extremists. That is what revolts me. It's disgusting.
We're going to come on to... Obviously, this debate will rage on. My view is, if that's true, that Sue Gray and Kier Starmer did that to Lindsay Hoyle, that's a disgrace. But I do think Lindsay Hoyle, by caving into them, if this is the case, showed weakness and not beholden of a Speaker of the House. He should have told him to go away. His clerks told him, do not do this. He is alleged to have buckled and did what Kier wanted, and that's wrong. He shouldn't have been weak. So there's all sorts of aspects to this story, but what we'd like to ask you, the viewers, is after the squabbling chaos in the Commons yesterday, are you sick of our politicians? Let us know what you think. Give us a call on 03444991000. You can text us, write talk at the beginning of your message and send it to 87222, or you can tweet us on X at TalkTV. But back to our big story, and there are mounting calls for the Commons Speaker to be suspended after a ceasefire debate saw the chamber descend into utter chaos last night.
The operation of Standing Order number 31, which governs the way amendments to the Opposition Day motions are dealt with, reflects an outdated approach. Order! Order! You'll be going and not be voting. Well, that's the first one to leave, then. If you want to, do it.
He lost control completely. That's all the MPs storming out there. So Lindsay Hoyle has since apologised for breaking with convention and allowing a Labour amendment on the SNP's motion.
But nearly 60 MPs now say they have no confidence in Hoyle, accusing him of allowing Kier Starmer to hijack the proceedings to stave off a Labour rebellion. Well, today, the Leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, slammed the opposition for putting pressure on Hoyle.